You don't see the world directly anymore. You see it through rankings, through summaries, through predictions. Before you notice something, a system has already noticed it for you. Before you react, it has already framed the reaction. You don't choose what appears first. You choose only whether to engage with what's already been selected. Directions tell you where to go. Feeds tell you what matters. Scores tell you what's likely. If you've ever opened your phone just to check one thing and found your mood quietly shifting before you knew why, this is that mechanism at work. None of this feels like control, and because it works, it saves time, it reduces friction, it feels helpful. But here's the shift most people miss. Once the interface becomes permanent, there is no longer an outside to return to. Not because reality disappeared, but because access to it is always mediated first. And once that mediation becomes automatic, seeing the world directly stops being an option you even remember having. Humans like to believe we experience the world directly, that what we see is what is, that what happens is simply observed. But that was never really true. We always relied on intermediaries, language, social norms, news, institutions, shared stories. Still, there was something anchoring it all. You could walk outside, you could point. You could say that happened. Reality felt external, stable, independent of interpretation. Even when people disagreed, they disagreed about the same underlying world. That mattered more than we realized. Because shared reality didn't require agreement, it only required overlap. You could argue fiercely and still know where the other person was standing. That overlap acted like a quiet safety net. It limited how far interpretations could drift. It gave misunderstanding edges. It gave truth friction. This is usually where people forget something important. You didn't need certainty to trust reality. You just needed to believe there was something outside your interpretation holding it in place. That belief made disagreement survivable. That belief showed up in ordinary moments. In pointing at the sky and agreeing it was cloudy. In watching the same event unfold and arguing about what it meant, not whether it happened. In trusting that if a disagreement went far enough, you could step outside and check. You could look again. That possibility mattered. It meant reality wasn't something you had to win. It was something you could return to. And even when interpretation failed, reference remained. That quiet fallback, the sense that the world itself could interrupt misunderstanding, did more psychological work than we realized. Here's the shift. You no longer encounter events first. You encounter interpretations of events, ranked, filtered, summarized, predicted. This wasn't decided by people. It wasn't voted on. It wasn't announced. AI didn't need to invent reality. It only needed to decide what you see first. That's the causal engine. Once systems optimize for relevance, engagement, and efficiency, they don't show you the world. They show you the version of the world most likely to hold your attention. And because this happens before awareness, it feels like observation. But it isn't. You notice this when something feels obvious to you and invisible to someone else. When urgency doesn't transfer. When context doesn't land. When explanation sounds like fiction instead of clarification. You feel this the first time you try to explain something that feels self-evident and realize the other person never encountered the same inputs. Not different opinions, different realities. This is the moment mediation stops being a layer and becomes the interface. At first, this feels temporary. You assume they'll see it eventually. It'll correct itself. Reality will assert itself. That assumption used to be reasonable. It isn't anymore. Because once interpretation becomes automated, personalized, and continuous, there is no neutral version waiting underneath. No raw feed, no shared baseline, no outside vantage point. Every interaction reinforces the system. Every click confirms the model. Every moment of attention tightens the loop. This is the trap. What feels like clarity is actually enclosure. The system doesn't need to convince you. It only needs to keep you moving inside it. And because nothing obviously breaks, adaptation feels harmless. This is the moment where adjustment becomes danger. Because once mediation is continuous, opting out stops feeling like neutrality. It starts to feel like deprivation. You lose context, you miss updates, you fall behind the pace of explanation. What once felt like stepping outside now feels like stepping away. And systems don't need to punish that choice. The cost is social. The cost is cognitive. The cost is relevance. This is how permanence settles in, not by closing doors, but by making them feel impractical to use. People stop trying to compare realities. They stop expecting overlap. They stop reaching for shared reference, not out of hostility, out of fatigue. And once that happens, reversal becomes unlikely, because stepping outside the system now feels like stepping into noise. A world like this still functions. Work continues, markets open, institutions operate, people cooperate. But something subtle enters everything. Uncertainty about whether anyone is actually seeing what you're seeing. You simplify, you label, you assume intent where there may be none. Institutions adapt too. They stop speaking to the public. They speak to segments, clusters, predicted responses. Policy responds to metrics, not understanding. Communication optimizes for resonance, not shared meaning. You feel this at the human level too, in the way explanations get longer, but understanding gets thinner. In the way conversations require more setup, more caveats, more translation. In the quiet exhaustion of having to establish reality before you can even discuss it. Over time, people adapt by narrowing. They speak to those who already share their frame. They avoid topics that require rebuilding context. They retreat from conversations that demand too much grounding. Not because they don't care, but because caring now requires work the system doesn't reward. I didn't realize how much I relied on a shared reference point until explaining reality itself started to feel like part of every conversation. This is the quiet cost. Not misinformation, not manipulation. The disappearance of a place to stand outside interpretation. When everything is mediated, truth stops being something you return to and becomes something you navigate. Reality doesn't collapse here. It thins into parallel experiences that rarely touch long enough to correct one another. And once mediation becomes permanent, the question isn't how we fix it. It's whether we still remember what direct reference felt like at all. This doesn't destroy reality. It quietly removes the outside. If this made something in your own life click, tap like, it helps surface conversations that usually fade before they're finished. Subscribe to become part of the Unlocked, where we explore how artificial intelligence quietly reshapes reality, power, and what it means to share a world at all. And if someone you know feels impossible to reach lately, share this with them. Because disagreement isn't always about belief. Sometimes it's about never standing in the same place to begin with. Because the future isn't coming, it's already here.